the beginning of the final episodes. This is Severance, the name of this episode, and I was emotional.
Yeah.
It was a solid episode.
Yeah.
I thought we were starting with the dream sequence because of Roger's mustache.
Oh, right, totally. Yeah. Completely, totally. What was Jesus? Also, so I think they gave us some timeline. We're months, some period of months
After the McCann
You think
version,
early
yeah.
1970 based on the Nixon speech?
Yeah, but that's my guess. Is
When Nixon started pulling out troops from...
And that was obviously the moon landing in '69. So it has been less than a year. Some period of months have elapsed. Pre-winter, so, and the air conditioning... Oh, no, that was the last episode, right? So, sorry. But like a lot, I mean, Styles apparently...
That was an era of, yeah.
But
totally.
you see it in the previous, like some of the guys were already starting...
Sure.
Pete had some 70s.
Yeah, I mean, Stan obviously has been, he's now moved from love beads to neckerchiefs, but,
Totally. He must be very comfortable. It's like, finally, people are coming around to my way of dressing.
It's when you've already had long hair on young people, but now older people are deciding that they're going to have long hair, so they're trying to figure out, what kind of long hair do I want?
Right.
When I'm bald,
that's the difference.
But seeing Roger's mustache there right off the bat in that first scene. So the actress that he thinks he recognized, you just think that he recognized her because she reminds him?
Elizabeth Reeser, yeah. Well, I think that we've established at this point that Don has a type. If you look at, Rachel, Rosemary DeWitt as the beatnik,
right.
Megan to some extent, like he likes them, Mrs.
Even Julia Ormond is the...
Julia Ormond and Linda Cardellini, like,
Betty.
No, exactly, the un-Betty. Like,
un-Betty,
right.
right.
like Betty was clearly the aspirational wife that he thought he was supposed to want, but he clearly likes them a little darker, a little thicker.
Right.
And so, I love the idea that for Roger, the way you apologize to a waitress is to leave a big fat tip. And then for the waitress, a big fat tip means, oh, you're going to come back later and fuck me.
Right. Yeah, that was.
There's a lot of semiotics going on in that transaction.
But their second conversation, where he just wanted to sit and have coffee, was nice. I mean, and she's interested. She's an interest. She's reading John Dos Passos.
Sure.
This is a complicated woman, and I guess $100 meant something. I also sensed that she was into that, although, because she didn't challenge that there was any compulsion to have sex in exchange for the money. Also, I don't know about any process whereby it's a down payment.
Well, we're also so used to seeing Don do this in bars. I mean, the whole series opens with him in a bar, and that's usually his pickup place. So the fact that this is a diner I thought that was kind of interesting. That this was not a swanky place. This was a place with real people in it.
Right, with real people. Well, he is clearly, I rewatched, so did Alonso, the final episode of the previous season, which is really Don at his absolute best.
Yes.
Appropriately fathering, not sleeping with the secretary.
Mentoring
Peggy without any inference of sex on the horizon, just mentoring her. Not wanting to be maudlin at convincing Ted to stay and do the job, even not attending the Robert Morse tip of because that's not Don's thing. He's going to go work.
Yes.
He's going to work,
But then he has his own moment of remembering him.
Right, but that's a personal thing.
Sure.
That's not so. It was him at his best, and it sort of continued. I mean, whether you think that of course, when he had, I don't think he would have had sex in the alley with the waitress if at the time he'd had sex in the alley with the waitress, he thought it was a payment on Roger's.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Like he didn't even know quite what was happening.
Right.
Going out there.
I think the theme of lives that could have been led, based on the song, the Peggy Lee song.
I was going to say they play that song a lot for this episode.
But that theme is interesting. I mean, in this episode, because I feel like you got three characters who had moments where they could go a certain way based on a life they imagined they led. You have Don with, finding out that Rachel had died, and that was clearly somebody he's thought about a lot. You have Peggy meeting a guy and having a great date with him, wanting to go to Paris, and then you have Ken at the moment where he thinks I could finally go write my novel. And I love that Don's the most romantic of those three. His view of his life that he could have led is the most romantic. It is with sadness that he thinks about Rachel. That is hanging around and watching this waitress who we assume reminds him of her.
Yeah.
It has a romantic feel to it. Peggy's just like the next morning she's like, what was I thinking? I mean, she's so practical, and then
And of course, her passport was at the office.
and then Ken literally is given the here's the life to go be a writer, and he chooses to instead live in a bad novel by being the revenge guy.
Right,
Yeah.
by being
Who goes,
vindictive, right.
Yes,
Although
and I just thought that was fascinating.
It's funny because Dave and I were arguing about would he have quit if they hadn't fired him? You know, would he have made the choice to agree with the wife and
No,
go with it, or was he?
because-
Can
clearly
he just
wouldn't,
not
because-
get it? Can he just
because
not
he
get
went
out
to
of this
jail.
world?
Yeah.
Even when it's handed to him. Although I felt bad for that because, well, he was at that moment we didn't know when he's having that conversation with Don. Maybe he is going to do the right thing, but or do
The self-fulfilling
right
thing.
the self-fulfilling,
Right.
the soul purifying
Yeah.
thing.
He'd rather live a bad novel than write a.
But-
write a
Right,
novel.
but you still, but even then, if you make that decision, you kind of want to make it. You don't want it made.
Yeah.
Right,
You don't want
but
it
the
made
thing,
for you.
my argument is that I mean, and you're right, he probably would have done it anyway. But I think the idea of had it not been a thing where he now has a reason to be vindictive about McCann and his former colleagues, and if it were just a question of him having the wherewithal to say for himself, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this, maybe he would have. I don't know.
Some people wait for the raise. I mean, he wanted to wait for the raise. It's
Wait for some sort of what he wanted, like all of us.
But
we want this.
Sure, the
raise
vindication,
says,
yeah.
"Thank
But he's
you,
not
nice
smart enough
job."
to realize that it was never going to happen for him. I mean,
Right. Well, he didn't. I guess none of us knew about. Or
I guess we know it kind of obviously didn't have the imagination to see where that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, did we know this much of the
I don't
complicated
think so.
history that he had with
I
McCann,
don't
or is
think
this
so.
a reveal?
I don't remember it.
And let's face it, Don is a novelist. I mean, Don is. You feel like Don could write a novel about all the things he thinks about, all the things he experiences. Like he's
Well, in the previous episode from the last chunk of the season, Peggy, they used the line a couple times that an ad tells a story, tells a great story, and it's like they are storytellers.
We've seen this in the last two episodes of the previous season, and certainly the last episode of the half season, and then the beginning of this. I mean, Don's evolution is significant. Look, he's single, and yes, he's still, sleeping with what do you call them? They fly on the airplanes.
Stewardesses.
Stewardesses. Thank you.
Flight attendants.
Tricky word. Stewardesses.
Air
1970.
hostess.
Stewardesses at the
Air-
time.
Air hostesses.
They were
Air
stewardesses.
hostesses. And there were and he had that wonderful, delightful conversation with and we get the
Of the telephone operator,
telephone
yeah.
operator with the message service. That was great stuff.
Very funny.
But still, this is a guy evolving. I mean, we see it, and I'm curious whether you think, I don't even know what I think, of whether Matt Weiner is going to give us a fully evolved character. Is this evolution continue, or is it essentially going to be Don's who he is, and I mean that's really
Don is the only guy who looks the same. I mean, he's looked the
right.
same the entire series.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's looks changes to the times.
couple of California, but you're right, totally
Yeah,
right.
and-
Yeah, he jumps on
also-
no bandwagons
And
for
also,
that kind
he
of thing.
actually looks like, I don't know if this is a trick they actually did, but does he look like his hair is probably actually gray, but he's dyed it now? I mean,
Oh, I don't
it
know.
actually, his black almost looks like a black that's been put over gray as opposed to just like naturally dark.
I'll tell you, I have an HD TV, which I didn't have
just-
before. There are things on this show that are a little unforgiving in HD, like all the process shots, like when Ted is flying those people in the airplane.
Oh, yeah.
When people are driving, it's like, ooh, God, that looked better in standard.
Do you have,
Yeah,
but are you maybe you're just getting used to HD because
Maybe.
I think it intentionally
Do you have that
reminds you.
Samsung thing that makes
No,
it look
no,
like a
no.
Mexican
I
soap
turned
opera?
off that. That I turned off.
That no show can
Yeah,
survive that. Yeah.
no.
Makes a silent movie look like
But you're right, he does. But also, because of the Don hasn't changed, he now looks like the most serious adult in the room. And he, of course, handled Ken's situation the way you'd want a friend or at minimum thoughtful colleague to.
Sure.
Let me make a call. Let me try to fix this. Oh, you
Don't
don't
do
want me to
anything
fix
rash.
this?
and yet he's
Okay. Well, good luck to you, my friend. That's
yeah.
nice, interesting.
but he's drinking and womanizing again. So
But he's
I
still
mean,
drinking
Yes.
womanizer.
And how telling is it that when the air hostess dumps red wine all over his white carpet, his instinct is not, how do I clean this up, but cover it up.
Right.
Like
So I
that's
think
such
it's
a
like
great
a
metaphorical.
urine-stained blanket.
There you go.
Like the woman just talked about.
But his behavior is still not atrocious. I mean,
No.
it's 1970s single guy atrocious.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
atrocious.
Why?
It's atrocious. But I mean, like I mean, he's a three-dimensional character.
He's interestingly
so,
flawed,
So he's
yeah.
interestingly flawed, but it's atrocious behavior.
I don't think so. What am I missing? What's atrocious?
2 marriages. that he
Oh, no,
probably-
right,
I mean,
no,
it's like-
but I'm
it's
saying,
just
yes,
that-
no, I
that
mean, he
where
has-
where he treated people badly.
He means
no,
in the
no, no, no,
moment.
no. He's been atrocious. I'm saying that what we're seeing now is a guy who is less atrocious that seems to be
Well,
growing.
there are interesting things. The fact that he now can turn his, where he tried to hide his past before, it's now banter for girls.
Right.
True,
at
but
the
it's
diner.
a boarding house, you know.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
the way he tells it.
but it's a thing he's not hiding anymore.
Sure.
So
Yes, that's true. That's true.
there may be ways he's not hiding anymore. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see him as different. I'm totally curious where, but maybe you're right. Maybe you can't change.
I mean, we're
his
just sort of
stripes.
used to him at this
Yeah.
point. That
Yeah.
unless he does something else egregious, we just kind of think, oh well, that's.
But
just
seeing
Don
these
being
two
Don.
episodes back to back, seeing him behave in such a grown-up, sort of emotionally evolved way, even about the hookup with the waitress, and how he behaved to Rachel's sister, and she wants none of it. Clearly, Rachel had said, I was in love with this man, and he hurt me terribly. That seemed to be the
The subtext,
clear
yeah.
evidence that she wasn't going to reveal that to him, but that was the subtext.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Peggy has a future with this guy, with Brian Krakow.
With Brian Krakow, I know. That was nice.
I think they kind of have a cool dynamic, and I think that he, she doesn't meet a lot of guys like this who sort of meet her at an equal level
Yes.
and aren't afraid of her and aren't trying to push her
That
around.
dinner was like very much like when he says like I'm okay with this. He's not acting like a guy normally acts, which would be like to send the dish back, and then when she pushes him about it, she's not acting like women at that time were supposed to act. It's like so they're both in both ways are kind of outsiders. And
Yeah.
Is he going to call her? Does he seem like?
I mean,
Oh, I
maybe
think
we'll
so.
see him
Whether or
again,
not
I
she'll
don't know.
take the call is the question, but I think he'll call her. For
I was
sure.
more interested in the fact that like she was like the next morning about the parachute. She was like the romance had completely gone out of that scenario. And
She hadn't been hung
I
over in
see
a
her
while.
talking herself into it. I think she does still feel something, but we'll.
No, I think so. I will
yeah.
say.
So go ahead.
No. And I was just going to point out that I felt I wrote it down because I felt very clever that I had caught Johnny Mathis, and then they talked about it.
Oh, they that's true. You did it because it's Mathis, and
Yeah.
then later they say Johnny. You're like, is his name Johnny?
Johnny
And I have to
Mathis?
say, one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've ever watched in all of Mad Men was Peggy and Joan having to sit and listen to those guys.
Oh,
in that meeting. I mean,
Peggy,
that was,
yeah. Let's
that
talk, let's
was
talk
just-
about Peggy
Like,
and
that was
Joan.
three women were
simply-
on this
that
panel.
was like-
they'd have been smart enough to talk about that first.
Yeah,
I mean,
we definitely need to talk about that because Peggy and Joan have had this dynamic for some time now, where
Yeah.
on the one hand they're kind of comrades in this situation where they're constantly being demeaned and underestimated by their coworkers, but then they also kind of have this prickly relationship with each other where they kind of resent the kind of woman the other one is. And
the look on Joan's face in that meeting is, I can't believe I'm having to hear this. And the look on Peggy's face is, well, I'm used to this by now.
Right, I know how to handle this.
And I mean, Joan's been in the workplace longer. You'd think she'd be more used to it, but I think that she feels like, damn it, I'm a partner. I shouldn't be listening to this anymore. And here
And
it
for
is.
Joan, it's a reminder that she got the partnership in a way that she's not proud of.
Well,
and
exactly,
others
yeah.
are willing to remind her of when it suits their needs.
And I think this also kind of touches on the idea of whenever you look at any movement where people are sort of the oppressed fighting against the oppressors, it's very easy for the oppressed to infight because it's an easier target to go after. Like there's that great scene early on in Selma, where they're talking about who's going to get credit for the march and who should be organizing it, and da-da-da. And certainly, in the queer civil rights movement, I've seen that. And so, the idea that on the one hand, yes, they're trying to work together and they're trying to sort of be the best that they can, but at the same time, it's very easy to be like, well, you shouldn't dress like that. Well, you couldn't dress like this.
Well, and it's also interesting that Joan, like early on, she makes a joke about department stores being bombed by radicals, and then it's a toss-off line where she's clearly like, but then what does she say in the elevator? She wants to burn the place down.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, right.
I mean, and so
That's-
and it's one of those
yeah.
like, this is how people become radicalized.
Yeah, and the store she goes back to is the one that she used to work in, but of course not.
I missed
totally
that.
denying
So
it.
she
had worked there, yeah.
right when she was not work when she
I
left.
think when she was married, I guess.
married and stopped.
Yeah.
Right. So that was so what was that decision like after this moment where you get marginalized for the way you look?
Well, she
and
went
then-
right back to
and
picking.
then
She wants
goes
to wear
pick up-
clothes that accentuate her. I mean, clearly she's trying to figure out how to own what she is,
Yeah.
and
Right.
be strong at the same time.
Well, and this is the woman who you'll
That's not
recall
easy, I don't
season
think.
1 was suggesting to secretaries that they get naked and put a paper bag over their head and look in the mirror to see what their best features were. And so she gets the game to a certain extent. And I mean, they call it retail therapy for a reason. You feel better when you buy
I just say
some
there's
new
a
stuff.
real sexual divide in that scene. I mean, I was mortified by it, as was my wife. But I suspect a lot of women were like, "Yep," like Whereas I don't know. I still think that as much as you get the ability to see the lives of people who aren't like you, I still think it was very useful for men to see because that's just Like, Jesus, you know that went on. Of course that kind of thing went on.
Like
Of course
in our
that was-
parents' lifetime, that
parents'
shit was happening.
To some extent now, at
It's
least now,
not-
though, you have
it hasn't
a...
It's
gone
much
away.
it's more polite or,
you can-
or done behind their back.
I
And
don't
you
know-
can go to
I don't
HR.
think it's any more
Right.
polite. I think you hear stories all the time about how it's
True, but it's not
polite.
as given a thing in the mainstream, and like now there's at least recourse
And
to complain
you're
about
likely,
it, you know?
in some places, you're likely to have a boss, a male boss, who at least would be like, yeah, you can't do that.
I mean,
You
I
do it,
think
and
that-
you're
The tech world is, I think, figuring out how
Figuring
to.
out
Sure.
how
Oh
to
no,
do
no,
that, 'cause it's a
totally.
young
Yeah. No.
industry.
I don't mean to
Yeah.
imply that it's
No,
gone away.
Look, you look at just look at the tweets from gamers to women. You know, that's enough.
Or on this very page.
Or on this very page. That's right. That's right. So very quickly, I want to tell one quick story. We got to go, but I at the TCM Film Festival we showed The Loved One, a great 1965 fun movie with
Robert Morse.
with Robert Morse, and I interviewed Robert Morse, and our time got cut. I didn't even get to ask him about Mad Men, but I did afterwards as we were walking up the stage, and I said, I can't believe I didn't ask you about Mad Men. And he was like, I come back to life and kill Don and take all his suits. Which was a nice line, but he had just screened the premiere at a screening, and what's his name, Alan Havey, right? Was there for The Loved One. Lou was there, and I told Alan, like, you know, how sort of worshipped he is in so many of the comedy worlds, and he said, you know, I just wanted to see, and I mentioned him in my intro, and then he said he just wanted to see Robert, and then he was going to try and go catch another movie, but Morse kind of wanted to stay, and then they went to the back and sat with each other and watched the movie together.
Oh,
It was
nice.
such a nice. It was a nice little Mad Men moment for two people who I think will not be on the show this year.
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think
Unless Scout's honor becomes, you know.
Unless Don dreams about. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah,
Right,
it's
yeah,
always a
but-
possibility.
But anyway, that was good stuff. Thank you. Obviously, there's just 7.
Yeah.
6, I think.
Oh,
I think we got 7 last time, and I think we're only getting 6 now.
Really?
I think. I could be wrong.
All right. Well, anyway, obviously we'll have them all here. Thanks for watching, everybody.